Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreadline Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video.
I wasn't the kind of person who dreamed about exploring jungles. I'm a corporate accountant. My idea of adventure was ordering a second margarita on a weeknight, but my girlfriend Mia loved nature, hikes, kayaking, camping. For her birthday, I booked us a guided eco tour through a rainforest reserve in Belize. I figured a few days sweating it out under giant leaves would earn me months of guilt-free Netflix at home. We flew in late, stayed the night at a tiny lodge on the edge of the forest, then met our guide, Orlando, at dawn. He was middle-aged, with leathery skin and calm eyes. "We'll take an easy pace," he promised, hoisting a worn backpack. Mia grinned, practically vibrating with excitement. "Just tried to keep my shoes out of the mud." The first day wasn't bad. Humid, sure, but the air smelled fresh and alive. We crossed little wooden bridges over clear creeks, saw bright parrots flit overhead, even spotted a line of leafcutter ants carrying bits of green twice their size. I took photos, already imagining how heroic I'd look when I posted them. We set up camp near a slow-moving river that evening. Mia swam, laughing as tiny fish darted around her ankles. I stayed on the bank, nursing a lukewarm bottle of local beer. When the sun went down, the jungle changed. The cheerful daytime sounds were replaced by shrill cries, clicks, low grunts that seemed way too close. I jumped at everything. Orlando laughed gently. "Jungle is loud, but it doesn't mean it's hunting you." I didn't sleep much. I kept imagining things moving outside the tent. Once, I was sure I heard something sniffing right by my head. Mia slept like a rock. The second day, we pushed deeper. Orlando showed us massive trees whose roots tangled like giant claws. He pointed out claw marks high up on one trunk. "Jaguar, long time ago," he said. Mia was fascinated. I just wanted to get to our next camp. That afternoon, we stumbled on something odd. In a clearing, we found stones arranged in a perfect circle, each about the size of a football. Orlando went still. "This is not from animals," he muttered. He wouldn't step inside the circle. Neither would Mia, though she snapped a photo. That night, the noises were different, less random. I'd swear they came in patterns. A rise, a pause, then a lower chorus. Once, I thought I heard something like a voice calling out, very far off. I tried to tell myself it was frogs, birds, anything but what it sounded like. Near midnight, I woke to find Mia sitting up. Her eyes were open wide, staring at the tent wall. I whispered her name. She didn't move. Then, just as I reached for her, she shivered all over and gasped like someone who'd been underwater too long. "What?" I hissed. She blinked at me. I thought someone was whispering my name, over and over, right outside. Orlando was up before dawn, already packing. When we tried to joke with him, he didn't smile. "We head back today," he said simply. "Shortcut? Faster?" Mia didn't argue. Neither did I. We set off just after first light. Orlando barely spoke, eyes always scanning the undergrowth. The trail was rougher than before, less traveled. Mia stayed close to me, her hand gripping mine, so tight my fingers went numb. A few hours in, we came across more of those stone circles. Some were smaller, some larger, but always the same deliberate pattern. Orlando's face tightened each time. Finally, I asked, trying to keep my voice light, "Who puts these out here? Tourists? Locals?" He shook his head. "Not tourists, and not people you want to meet." I waited for a laugh that never came. By early afternoon, the air felt different. Heavy, almost oily. Every breath tasted slightly metallic. I wiped sweat from my face and noticed tiny smears of red on my palm. At first, I panicked, thinking it was blood, but it wasn't. It looked like some sort of sap, dark and sticky. I couldn't figure out where I'd brushed against it. Mia was jumpy too. She kept glancing over her shoulder. Once she swore she saw someone step behind a tree, a figure too tall and thin to be Orlando. We stopped, scanned the forest. Nothing but tangled roots and shadows. Orlando didn't even turn around. "Do not look long into the trees," he said. "Sometimes something looks back." It wasn't much later when we realized we were being followed. At first, it was just the sense of movement. Bushes that shivered after we passed, branches that settled as if just released. Then we started hearing it outright. Soft footfalls, always behind us, never beside. Orlando drew a small charm from under his shirt, kissed it, and began to murmur in Spanish. I caught only fragments. "Viejos espíritus, no nos lleven, dejen pasar." Old spirits, don't take us, let us pass. That's when Mia stopped dead. Her eyes were wide and glassy. I turned to follow her gaze and felt my heart seize. Maybe 20 feet back, half concealed by vines, stood something watching us. It was shaped like a man, but wrong, impossibly lean, skin dark and bark-like, as if it had grown straight out of the jungle. Its head tilted slightly, almost curious. In one gnarled hand, it held what looked like a bundle of roots, dripping with that same dark red sap. Then it stepped back into the green and vanished soundlessly. Orlando didn't hesitate. He grabbed our arms and practically dragged us forward. "Do not look back," he hissed. "Not once." I don't remember how long we walked. Hours, maybe. I tried not to look anywhere but Orlando's broad shoulders, but every so often I'd hear faint whispering, my name carried on a breath that didn't match the wind. Eventually, we broke through to a dirt road. A battered old truck waited there, arranged by Orlando ahead of time. He pushed us into the cab, muttered something to the driver, then climbed in himself. Only when the forest was slipping away behind us did he finally let out a long, shaky breath. Mia started to cry. I just held her hand, trying to pretend I couldn't feel how cold her skin was. We flew home the next day, tried to laugh it off, told ourselves it was just an overactive imagination, local superstition. But sometimes at night, Mia still wakes up gasping, saying she hears something whispering her name from the trees outside our apartment. And last week I found a small pile of stones by our front door, arranged in a perfect circle. I swept them away before she could see, but I've barely slept since, waiting for the night something steps out of the shadows again. Curious, patient, and still very much hungry. I'd never planned to step foot in a jungle. I was a city kid. My idea of roughing it was a long weekend at a cabin with Wi-Fi issues. But after my mom died, I guess I needed something drastic to jolt me out of the rut I'd been stuck in. That's how I ended up saying yes, when my cousin Rick suggested we join a guided survival trek through the Amazon. "It'll change your life," he promised. It was late July when we flew into a suffocating little airport that felt like stepping into a damp oven. By the time we met our guide, a leathery local named Louise, who smelled faintly of rum and clove cigarettes, I was questioning every life choice that had led me here. The first days blurred together in a haze of sweat and buzzing insects. Every part of me itched. My shoulders ached from the pack. Louise led us off the broader tourist trails almost immediately. "More pure," he said with a grin full of yellow teeth. Rick loved it. He kept bounding ahead, hacking at vines with a cheap machete he'd bought at a roadside stand. Me? I kept checking the GPS tracker clipped to my belt like a security blanket. I was painfully aware of how far we were from anyone who could help if something went wrong. Nights were the worst. Louise insisted on small, smokeless fires to keep from advertising our presence to local wildlife, or something else. He'd mumble under his breath, eyes scanning the tree line. I tried to laugh it off, but sometimes I'd catch him making small signs with his hands, almost like he was warding something away. 3 nights in, I woke up to whispering. Not Portuguese, not English, something softer, slippery. Rick snored beside me in his hammock, oblivious. I sat there clutching my flashlight, scanning the trees until sunrise. Louise claimed it was just wind through the canopy, but there hadn't been a breeze. On the 5th day, things started disappearing. First, it was a coil of paracord from Rick's pack. Then, one of Louise's water jugs. We tore apart camp, convinced we'd misplaced them, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I started noticing things I was sure hadn't been there before. Small piles of stones arranged in deliberate spirals, twigs snapped into strange, jagged shapes. Rick thought it was hilarious. Maybe the monkeys around here are little artists, he joked. Louise didn't laugh. That night he stayed up sharpening his knife, mumbling a prayer in low, urgent tones. The next morning, we found a dead bird on my sleeping tarp. Its eyes had been plucked out, tiny chest torn open. Rick tried to brush it off, even offered to clean it up for me. I told him to leave it. Something about the way it was laid there, neatly centered on the nylon, felt intentional, like it was meant to be seen. We packed up quickly. Louise said we were changing course to loop back toward the river sooner. Not safe here, he muttered, refusing to explain further. Rick rolled his eyes, but I was relieved. Later that afternoon, we came upon a clearing we hadn't crossed before. In the middle stood a crude wooden totem, maybe 4 feet high, draped with decaying flower garlands. Carvings ran up and down its surface, figures with too many limbs, mouths open in silent screams. Louise turned pale. Without a word, he spun on his heel and pushed us back into the undergrowth. That night, we didn't even set up hammocks. Louise made us sleep close together on the ground, our packs piled in a defensive circle. Every few minutes, I thought I saw movement just beyond the dim glow of Louise's little lantern, shapes flitting from tree to tree, too tall and thin to be any normal animal. At some point, I must have drifted off. I woke with a start to the unmistakable sound of someone, or something, breathing just inches from my ear. When I swung the light around, there was nothing there. Just darkness and the dense wall of leaves. But I swear, I heard it retreat, a soft rustle like someone slipping away on bare feet. When morning came, Louise wouldn't even look at me. He was busy stuffing gear into his pack, hands trembling so badly he kept dropping things. Rick finally snapped, grabbing his arm. "What the hell is going on, man? You're scaring us worse than the jungle is." Louise pulled free and wiped sweat from his brow. His eyes darted to the trees. "This place is hungry," he whispered. "We shouldn't have come this deep. There are old things here, older than any people. They don't like when strangers stay too long." Rick let out a bark of nervous laughter, but I felt the blood drain from my face. We broke camp in record time, barely speaking, moving fast and clumsy through the undergrowth. Around midday, we lost the trail. The GPS wouldn't lock. It just spun a blank gray screen. Even Louise seemed disoriented, muttering to himself, glancing behind us every few seconds. The trees felt closer somehow, like they'd thickened when we weren't looking. Every direction looked the same. Green walls, tangled roots, shafts of light that seemed to bend oddly as if filtering through water. Then we heard it. A faint, hollow chanting. It echoed through the trees, impossible to pin down. Sometimes it sounded far off, sometimes as though it was just beyond the next fern. Louise spun in a slow circle, knife held tight, whispering prayers under his breath. Rick hissed at me to kill my flashlight, said it was drawing attention. We stood there in the dim jungle gloom, listening. The chanting rose in pitch, turning into a breathy giggling that felt too human to be animal, too wrong to be human. Then, silence. Louise bolted. Didn't say a word, just dropped his pack and ran. Rick shouted after him, but I didn't wait. Instinct took over, and I sprinted too, branches whipping my arms and face, lungs burning. Rick crashed through the underbrush right behind me. We ran until we physically couldn't anymore, collapsing into a heap beside a huge mossy tree. My legs shook so badly, I thought they'd give out entirely. Somewhere behind us, the forest was deathly still. Rick managed a strangled laugh, but when he looked at me, his grin slipped. "Bro, your neck." I reached up and felt something tacky. My hand came away with a smear of dark red. In my panic through the brush, something must have scratched me. Or at least that's what I told myself. But the cut was clean, almost deliberate, stretching from behind my ear down to my collar, like something sharp had caressed me as I passed. We never found Louise. We staggered for hours until we hit a muddy creek that eventually led us to a fishing village. The locals wouldn't look us in the eye. A few crossed themselves as we limped by. Back home, I tried to put it away as a nightmare trip gone wrong. But sometimes at night, just as I'm about to drift off, I'll hear faint whispering, like someone calling me back in that same soft, slippery tongue I first heard in the jungle. I keep telling myself it's leftover trauma, that it's all in my head. But last week, I woke up with a long, neat scratch on my neck. Same place, same angle. As if something's reminding me that distance doesn't matter. I was marked, and sooner or later, it'll come finish what it started. I'll admit, I wasn't thrilled when my brother Tom pitched the idea of backpacking through a South American jungle for 2 weeks. I'm more of a cheap hotel near a beach kind of guy, but he'd just finished his PhD. I'd been dragging through a breakup, and it felt like the right time to shake things up, or at least fake some adventurous spirit for his sake. We flew into a humid little airport, hired a local guide named Esteban, and set out the next morning. I remember the weight of my pack digging into my shoulders, sweat already soaking my shirt by 9 a.m. The air smelled like damp earth and crushed leaves. Bugs were relentless, buzzing at our ears, crawling across our necks. Still, it was stunning. Vines tangled over everything, bright birds flitting between massive trunks. The first few days went fine. Hard, sure, but kind of mesmerizing. At night, we'd pitch our small tent on patches of raised ground, eat instant noodles, and listen to a deafening wall of chirps and howls. I found it hard to sleep. Too many strange noises, too dark, too alive. It started small. On the 4th night, I woke up to the sound of something brushing against the tent fabric. At first I thought it was wind, then I realized there was no wind. The air was thick and still. Tom snored beside me. I held my breath and waited. A dragging sound circled us once, twice, then stopped. The next morning I saw faint streaks in the mud around the tent. Esteban said it was probably a tapir. I nodded like I believed him. 2 nights later, I got up to relieve myself a few yards from camp. My headlamp caught something, eye shine, low to the ground, and then gone in a blink. I stumbled back, told myself it was just a possum or coati, but my heart wouldn't slow down. By day 7, Esteban seemed off. He spent long minutes staring into the trees, his eyes darting like he was watching for something. When I asked if we were still on track, he forced a grin. See, just need to be careful here. Old stories. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay there, listening to the jungle. It felt like the sounds shifted, like the frogs and insects were suddenly quiet, leaving a hollow silence that rang in my ears. Then I heard whispering, soft, urgent. Could have been wind pushing through vines, but it had the rhythm of words. I squeezed my eyes shut, told myself I was exhausted, my brain inventing things. In the morning, Esteban was gone. His pack, his machete, gone. just footprints leading into the undergrowth. Tom tried to laugh it off. Probably just scouting ahead. Locals, man. But he couldn't hide the shake in his hands as we packed up camp. We tried to retrace our steps back toward the river. By afternoon, we both admitted we were lost. I kept thinking I saw someone ahead on the trail, just a glimpse of a bare shoulder slipping behind a tree, dark hair tangled down a back. Once I called out, "Esteban?" And the jungle seemed to echo it back, but with a mocking lilt. That evening we found what was left of a campfire, not ours, older, long dead. Bones littered the dirt around it, small and clean. I tried to tell myself they were animal. Tom poked at them with a stick and wouldn't meet my eyes. We spent the next night huddled together without a fire. The air felt too close, like we were inside something breathing. At some point I must have dozed because I woke to Tom shaking me, panic etched across his face. "Do you hear it?" he whispered. I strained my ears. At first, nothing. Then a low humming, almost a chant. It circled us, moving tree to tree. I caught faint flashes between trunks, shapes that were too thin, too long. I thought of those eyes in my headlamp. We ran. I don't know how long, crashing through ferns and tripping over roots. Eventually, we collapsed, sucking air. The jungle was silent again, like it had closed over whatever had been there. When dawn finally came, we realized we'd somehow ended up back by the old campfire, the same circle of bones. We never saw Esteban again. Eventually, local search teams found us wandering by the riverbank, dehydrated and half delirious. They never found our original campsite or any sign of the footprints we swore we'd seen. Back home, people tell me it was just stress, fear, playing tricks on exhausted minds. Maybe. But sometimes, late at night, I'll catch that same low hum drifting through my open window. And every time, I slam it shut and lie there, holding my breath, listening for whispers in the dark.